My mother was already spending the $1 million she thought she'd stolen from me before I even turned off the engine of my car. The salt air at the beach house usually smells like childhood and safety, but today it smelled like a crime scene. I sat in my Honda, the seatbelt still tight across my chest, watching the waves crash against the shoreline of the property that had defined my family's identity for 3 decades. It's a strange thing, isn't it? To stand on your own front porch and feel like an intruder in your own life because the people who share your DNA have decided your silence is a sign of weakness. I looked at the weathered cedar shingles, the wraparound porch where my father used to sit with his coffee, and the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the Atlantic. To my mother and sister, this wasn't a sanctuary. It was an ATM with a view. I'm Sarah. For 27 years, I've been the quiet one, the one who didn't make waves, the daughter who supposedly wasted a prestigious law degree to work for some little environmental nonprofit. In my family's eyes, if you aren't wearing a designer suit or driving a car that costs more than a starter home, you're basically invisible. My sister, Lisa, is the opposite. She's 29, a marketing executive for a luxury hotel chain, and she carries herself with the kind of entitlement that only comes from never being told no. The emergency family meeting was set for 2 p.m. sharp. My mother, Margaret, doesn't do casual. Everything is a production. As I stepped out of my car, the gravel crunching under my thrift store boots, I saw the procession begin. First, Mom's silver Lexus pulled in, shimmering with the reflected light of the midday sun. Then came Lisa's white BMW, looking like a polished pearl. But it was the third car, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows, that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I didn't recognize that car. And in my world, an unknown car at a family meeting usually means a witness or an executioner. "Sarah, you're actually on time for once," Mom called out, her voice carrying that high-pitched, forced cheerfulness she uses when she's about to ask for a favor she has no intention of returning. She was dressed in her closer outfit, a sharp real estate agent blazer and gold jewelry that clinked like coins. Lisa emerged from her BMW looking like a Pinterest board for a royal wedding, clutching a designer planner as if it were a holy relic. Then, the woman from the black sedan stepped out. She was mid-50s, draped in silk, carrying an expensive leather portfolio with the kind of confidence that says, "I charge by the minute and I'm worth every cent." "You must be the younger sister," the woman said, her eyes scanning my outfit with a clinical, dismissive coldness. "Sarah, this is Victoria Sterling," Lisa announced, her eyes gleaming with a feverish kind of excitement. "She's the premier wedding coordinator on the coast. Victoria, this is my sister Sarah. She works in the public sector." The way she said public sector made it sound like I spent my days cleaning highway medians. We went inside, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. The beach house was quiet, filled with the ghosts of my father's laughter and the scent of old pine, but the 3 of them moved through it like they were already measuring the walls for a teardown. They circled the dining table, the same table where I'd spent 6 years of my life working late into the night to save this very roof from collapsing, and laid out their maps of conquest. "The vision," Victoria began, opening her portfolio with a theatrical flourish that felt more like a ritual than a business meeting, "is a destination wedding at the Thornton Estate in Napa Valley. 300 guests, a celebrity chef, a string quartet flown in from Prague. We aren't just planning a wedding, Lisa. We are staging an entrance into the elite tiers of society." Lisa was practically vibrating. "The Thorntons own one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the country, Sarah. Bradley's parents expect a certain level. Coastal Weddings magazine is already interested in the exclusive rights." I sat there, sipping my lukewarm iced tea, feeling the weight of the silence in the room. Have you ever noticed how people only talk about family when they want you to sacrifice something for them? I watched Victoria's manicured finger point to a number at the bottom of a spreadsheet. "The only minor hurdle," Victoria said, her voice dropping into a tone of mock concern, "is the budget. For an event of this magnitude, a true Thornton caliber celebration, we are looking at approximately $400,000. I nearly choked. 400,000 for a single day? Lisa, that's more than the mortgage on a mansion. Mom's face hardened. The mask of the loving mother slipped, revealing the ruthless real estate agent underneath. Sarah, don't be small-minded. This isn't just a party, it's an investment in Lisa's future. The Thornton name opens doors that you can't even imagine. We have to show them we belong. And where exactly is this investment coming from? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The air in the room felt suddenly very thin. The beach house, Mom declared, her voice ringing with the finality of a judge passing a sentence. It's sitting gold. A legacy property like this is wasted on us just sitting here. Selling it will fund the wedding and give Lisa the start she deserves. It's what your father would have wanted. The lie about my father felt like a physical blow. My father loved this house more than he loved his own career. He spent his final days watching the tide come in from this very porch. To use his name to justify selling his soul felt like a sacrilege. I've already done the legwork, Mom continued, pulling a manila folder from her bag. I've spoken with the top agents in my network. In this market, we're looking at a $1.2 million valuation. It covers the wedding, a luxury honeymoon in Tuscany, and leaves a nice cushion for me and Lisa. I looked at the documents spread out across the table. They had it all planned. The listing agreement, the marketing strategy, even the coming soon signs were probably already in the trunk of Mom's Lexus. They hadn't even considered that I might have an opinion. Why would they? To them, I was just the quiet girl in the background. Wait, I said, my voice steady despite the hammer of my heart against my ribs. You want to sell the family's only remaining asset to pay for a wedding? What happens to the memories here? What happens to our connection to Dad? Lisa rolled her eyes. Sarah, don't be so dramatic. Memories don't get you invited to the Thorntons' annual gala. Besides, you hardly even use this place. You're always busy with your little legal projects. Victoria nodded sagely, as if she were a philosopher instead of a party planner. Investment in image is the highest form of wealth. Once Lisa is a Thornton, this house will seem like a shack compared to what she'll have access to. That was the moment I realized they didn't just want the money. They wanted to erase the reality of our lives to paint a fantasy for people who didn't even know their names yet. It's funny how quickly people will set fire to their own history just to keep a stranger warm for an evening. The back door creaked open and a man in his 60s walked in. He was wearing a rumpled suit and carrying a briefcase that had seen better days. Roger Whitman. I knew him. He was a local agent who had worked with my mother for years, the kind of guy who wouldn't let a little thing like ethics get in the way of a commission. Sorry I'm late, Margaret, Roger said, not even looking at me as he set his briefcase on the table. Traffic on the bridge was a nightmare, but I've got the final listing papers ready for signature. Mom beamed. Roger, thank you. This is my younger daughter, Sarah, the one we talked about. Sarah, Roger is going to handle the sale. He structured it for a quick turnaround so we can meet Victoria's deposit deadlines. Roger gave me a practiced, oily smile. Pleasure, Sarah. Your mother tells me you're being a team player for your sister's big day. Very noble. If you'll just sign here, we can have this on the MLS by sunset. He slid a thick stack of papers toward me. My name was typed neatly under a signature line that had already been flagged with a little yellow "Sign Here" sticker. It was all so professional, so organized, so completely illegal. It's for the dream, Sarah, Mom urged, her hand resting on my shoulder in a way that felt more like a restraint than an embrace. Sign the papers. Let's make this happen for your sister. I looked at the pen Roger was holding out. The ink was black. The air was still. I could hear the waves outside, a constant rhythmic reminder of the world beyond this room. I need to take a call, I said, standing up so abruptly that the chair scraped loudly against the hardwood. Sarah, now? Lisa huffed. This is important. So is this, I replied, walking toward the window. I pulled my phone out and hit a speed dial number I'd had ready for weeks. I didn't even have to look at the screen. I knew the timing had to be perfect. This is Sarah Morrison, I said into the phone, my voice clear and loud, cutting through the expectant silence of the dining room. I watched my mother's face. She was still smiling, that confident, I always win smile. Ms. Morrison, this is David Chin from Chin and Associates Property Law, the voice on the other end said. I had the volume up just enough. I'm calling regarding the unauthorized listing attempt on your property at 1847 Ocean Drive. Our monitoring service flagged an attempted MLS entry without owner authorization. The silence that followed was so heavy you could have weighed it. Roger's hand, still holding the pen, began to tremble. Mom's smile didn't just falter, it disintegrated. Unauthorized listing, I asked, looking Roger directly in the eye. That's strange. I have a room full of people here who seem to think they have the right to sell this house. Is there a problem, Roger? Mom whispered, her voice cracking like dry parchment. Mr. Chin, I said, ignoring her. Could you please clarify the ownership status for everyone present? I think there's some confusion regarding the title. Certainly, the lawyer's voice came through, crisp and authoritative. Property records show that 1847 Ocean Drive has been owned by Morrison Environmental Holdings since December 2019. You, Sarah Morrison, are listed as the sole proprietor and the only individual with decision-making authority over the asset. Victoria Sterling's perfectly composed face looked like it had been hit by a cold front. I'm sorry. What does that mean, exactly? I hung up the phone and leaned against the window frame, crossing my arms. It means I own this house. I've owned it for 6 years. Every shingle, every floorboard, and every grain of sand on this lot belongs to me. The silence stretched out, painful and raw. Lisa's mouth was open, but no sound came out. Roger was frantically shuffling through his briefcase, his face turning a shade of pale that usually requires a hospital visit. That's impossible, Mom said, her voice a low, dangerous hiss. The house has been in the family for 30 years. I am the executor of your father's estate. You were the executor, Mom, I said calmly, until the estate went into probate and you realized that Dad's accounting firm hadn't just declined, it had collapsed. You were facing foreclosure on this property within 6 months of his funeral. The back taxes alone were $60,000. The foundation was rotting. The roof was leaking. You and Lisa were too busy shopping for grief consolation wardrobes to notice that the bank was about to take everything. Roger looked like he wanted to vanish through the floorboards. Mrs. Morrison, you told me your daughter was just a co-signer on a family trust. You represented yourself as having the authority. There is no trust, Roger, I interrupted. When the foreclosure notice came, I didn't come to you for money because I knew you didn't have any. I used my savings from my first 2 years at the firm. I took out a private loan. I purchased the property through my company, Morrison Environmental Holdings, to keep it from being seized by the state. I paid the back taxes. I spent $180,000 on structural repairs and environmental compliance over the last half-decade. Mom gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. But we all contributed. We kept this place going. You contributed $200 once for a new blender, Mom, I said, not letting her off the hook. I've paid every utility bill, every insurance premium, and every repair for 72 consecutive months while you treated this place like a free hotel. You only care about this house now because you see it as a way to buy your way into the Thornton family. Victoria Sterling began gathering her silk scarves and leather portfolio with increasing urgency. This wasn't the sophisticated wedding planning session she'd signed up for. This is highly irregular. If the title is not clear, we cannot proceed with the budget strategy. The title is perfectly clear, I said. It just doesn't have my mother's name on it. Sometimes we let people believe we are less than we are because it's easier than dealing with their ego. But there comes a point where the cost of being underestimated becomes too high. Have you ever felt that moment? The moment you realize that being nice is just giving people permission to walk all over you. If you've ever had to stand your ground against the people who were supposed to protect you, you know exactly how I felt in that room. Lisa, I said, turning to my sister, who was now vibrating with a different kind of energy, fury. You said I worked for some nonprofit. I founded the Morrison Environmental Foundation. I'm a coastal protection attorney. This house isn't just a vacation spot, it's my primary residence and my firm's headquarters. We provide legal services to communities that are being bullied by developers. We're currently fighting 3 major pollution cases out of that office in the back. Lisa found her voice, but it was shrill and desperate. But you're a lawyer. Why wouldn't you tell us you were making that kind of money? I tried, I said, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you told me it was cute that I wanted to save the whales. Every time I mentioned a win in court, Mom asked me when I was going to find a husband who could actually support me. You decided I was unsuccessful because I wasn't flashy. You mistook my privacy for poverty. Roger was already halfway to the door. Margaret, I'm out. My agency has a zero-tolerance policy for fraudulent listings. If you represented a property you didn't own, that's a legal nightmare I'm not touching. Wait, Mom cried out. Roger, it was a misunderstanding. I assumed. Assumption is the first step toward a felony, Margaret. Roger snapped, his professional mask completely gone. My phone rang again. This time, I put it on speaker. Ms. Morrison, this is Linda Kaufman from the State Real Estate Board. A crisp professional voice filled the room. I'm calling regarding the formal complaint filed this morning concerning an unauthorized listing by license holder Margaret Morrison. I understand you are the owner of the property in question. The blood drained from my mother's face. In the world of real estate, the State Board is the final authority. A call from them is the equivalent of a heart attack for a career. Yes, I am the owner, I said into the phone. And no, I never authorized my mother or anyone else to list 1847 Ocean Drive for sale. In fact, they are currently sitting in my dining room trying to pressure me into signing documents they've already backdated. I see, Linda Kaufman replied. Margaret Morrison, are you present? Mom couldn't even speak. She just stared at the phone like it was a ticking bomb. She's here, I said. Mrs. Morrison, the voice on the speaker continued. Be advised that your real estate license is being placed under immediate emergency suspension pending a full investigation into fraud and misrepresentation. You are required to report to the board office within 24 hours for a hearing. Any active listings under your name are being flagged for review. The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was the wind rattling the window panes. My mother, the woman who lived for her image and her professional standing, looked like she had aged 20 years in 20 seconds. Her career, the thing she used to look down on me, was crumbling in front of the very daughter she tried to rob. Suspended, Mom whispered, sinking into the pine chair as if her bones had turned to lead. But, my career, I've been an agent for 20 years. You should have thought about that before you tried to steal from your own blood to pay for a party, I said, my voice cold. Family isn't a license to commit fraud, Mom. Linda Kaufman's voice cut back in. Ms. Morrison, do you wish to press criminal charges at this time, or should we keep this strictly within the licensing board for now? I looked at my mother. She looked small. For the first time in my life, she didn't look like a giant. She looked like a woman who had spent her life building a house of cards and was now watching the wind take it. That depends, I said, on whether this meeting is over and whether my mother and sister understand that they are guests in my home and that their stay has just expired. Victoria Sterling didn't wait for an invitation to leave. She practically sprinted to the door, her high heels clicking a panicked rhythm on the hardwood. Lisa, I'll send you a bill for my time, but I'm afraid our contract is void. I don't work with this. Roger was right behind her, not even saying goodbye. The black sedan and the white BMW were gone within minutes, leaving only the silver Lexus in the driveway and the heavy, suffocating tension in the house. Lisa started to cry. Not the loud, dramatic sobbing she used to get her way, but a quiet, jagged sound of someone whose entire world had just been exposed as a lie. What am I going to tell Bradley? His family. They're expecting a Thornton wedding. They're going to think we're nobodies. If Bradley loves you for your wedding budget, Lisa, then you're already a nobody to him, I said, walking over to her. I wanted to be angry, but mostly, I just felt sorry for her. You've spent so much time trying to be worthy of people who judge you by your bank account that you've forgotten how to be worthy of yourself. How could you do this? Mom asked, finally looking up. There was no anger left in her, only a hollowed-out kind of shock. How could you let me believe the house was still family property? I didn't let you believe anything, I countered. I told you 6 years ago that I was taking over the bills. I told you I was handling the paperwork. You just didn't listen because you didn't think I was capable of anything significant. You saw what you wanted to see. A quiet, unsuccessful daughter who would always be there to provide a free beach house for your summer vacations. You never asked how the taxes were paid. You never asked how the new roof was funded. You just took, and then you tried to take the one thing I built for myself. I walked to the filing cabinet in the corner of the room, the one they'd walked past 1,000 times without ever wondering what was inside. I pulled out a thick blue folder and dropped it on the table. Here, I said, the deed, the tax receipts, the renovation contracts, my law firm's incorporation papers. It's all there. I've been the adult in this family for 6 years while you two were playing make-believe. Mom reached out and touched the folder, her fingers trembling. I thought we were doing this for all of us. No, I said. You were doing it for you. You were doing it so you could feel important at a country club in Napa Valley, but this house, this is where my work happens. This is where I protect people from people like you. The next few hours were a blur of packing and silence. I watched from the porch as my mother and sister loaded their designer bags into the Lexus. They didn't look back at the ocean. They didn't look at the house. They looked at their phones, probably already crafting the lies they would tell to explain why the destination wedding was being cancelled. But here's the thing about truth. Once it's out, you can't put it back in the bottle. 6 weeks later, Lisa's wedding happened. It wasn't in Napa Valley. It wasn't featured in Coastal Weddings magazine. There was no string quartet from Prague and no celebrity chef. They held it in a local botanical garden. 200 guests instead of 300. The catering was done by a local bistro and the flowers were grown by a woman 3 towns over. The total cost? $35,000. Lisa and Bradley paid for it themselves. I was there, of course. I wore a dress I'd had for years, and I sat in the 3rd row. I watched Bradley's mother lean over to Lisa during the reception and whisper something. Later, Lisa told me what she said. "This is so refreshing. It's so authentic. Most people we know try so hard to impress us that they forget to actually be happy. You're a very practical young woman, Lisa. Bradley is lucky." Lisa had looked at me when she told me that, and for the first time in our lives, she didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me with something that resembled respect. Mom's license was reinstated after 3 months, but only after she completed a grueling ethics course and paid a significant fine. She's still an agent, but she doesn't do luxury anymore. She handles modest rentals and starter homes. She tells me it's less stressful, but I think she just finally realized that the higher you climb on a ladder of lies, the harder the wind blows. As for me, I'm still at 1847 Ocean Drive. The waves are still crashing against the shore, and the salt air still fills my office. My foundation just won its biggest case yet, preventing a massive resort from destroying a protected marshland just 10 miles down the coast. I've learned that the most powerful thing you can be is underestimated. It gives you the room to build a fortress while everyone else is busy looking at the paint. Loneliness makes dangerous choices feel reasonable, but I wasn't lonely. I was just waiting for the right moment to show them that the quiet daughter was the one holding the keys all along. Sometimes the people who try to sell your soul are the ones who gave you life, but that doesn't mean you have to let them close the deal. You have to be the one to decide what your legacy is worth. If you've ever had to protect your dream from the people who should have helped you build it, I want to hear your story in the comments. And if you believe that integrity is worth more than any designer wedding, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of people who finally found their voice. The beach house remains. It's not an investment. It's not an ATM. It's home. And it's mine.